They spent years playing loving husbands, devoted wives, and loyal partners on screen. They made audiences believe in the power of commitment, family, and doing the right thing. Then the cameras stopped rolling, and reality looked very different. From secret children to $30 million divorces to affairs that ended careers, these are the real-life stories behind some of television's most familiar faces. Here are 8 sitcom stars who cheated on their partners and paid the price. The $30 Million Affair. For 11 seasons, Ted Danson played Sam Malone on Cheers, a charming, womanizing bar owner who somehow always redeemed himself at the last moment. Off-screen, Danson was living a very different life. He was a devoted family man, married to his second wife Casey Coates since 1977. Casey had suffered a severe stroke while giving birth to their first daughter in 1979, and Danson had reportedly stood by her throughout her recovery. Their marriage looked to the outside world like the real thing. Then, in 1992, Danson was cast opposite Whoopi Goldberg in a film called Made in America. The two began an affair almost immediately. Tabloids caught wind of it. Casey Coates found out, filed for divorce, and because no prenuptial agreement existed, the settlement that followed became one of the most expensive in Hollywood history. Reportedly, $30 million paid by Danson to his former wife. Danson later admitted, without going into specifics, that he had been, in his own words, a bit of a liar in his relationships, and that he hadn't grown up emotionally until he was well into his 40s. The relationship with Goldberg lasted only about 18 months before ending in 1993. Danson went on to marry actress Mary Steenburgen in 1995, a marriage that, as of today, has lasted more than 30 years. The cost of getting there, financially and personally, was considerable. The secret child nobody knew about. Arnold Schwarzenegger appeared on the sitcom circuit only briefly, but his cultural footprint in that space is real, as a recurring guest presence during peak television years, and as one of the most famous actors on the planet during the era when sitcom crossovers were everywhere. What he was hiding during those years of peak public life was a secret that didn't surface until 2011, and when it did, it ended a 25-year marriage to one of the most prominent women in American public life. In 1996, while Maria Shriver and their children were away on vacation, Schwarzenegger had a sexual encounter with the family's longtime housekeeper, Mildred Baena, at their California home. Baena became pregnant. A son, Joseph, was born in 1997, just 5 days after Schwarzenegger and Shriver welcomed their own son, Christopher. For years, Schwarzenegger reportedly tried to convince himself that Baena's husband was the father, but as Joseph grew older, the physical resemblance became, according to Schwarzenegger himself, impossible to ignore. He said nothing. He watched his wife defend him publicly on Oprah against infidelity allegations. He ran for governor of California, won, served 2 full terms, and was still keeping the secret. The truth came out in a couples counseling session in January 2011, the day after Schwarzenegger's term as governor ended. The therapist asked directly whether he was Joseph's father. He confirmed that he was. Shriver described sitting alone on a hotel room floor afterward, in the dark, in tears. Their divorce took 10 years to finalize. Schwarzenegger has since called the affair a major failure and has spoken with visible emotion about what the secret cost everyone involved: his wife, his children, and the son who grew up not fully knowing who his father was. The man whose show was his real life. Charlie Sheen played Charlie Harper on 2.5 Men, a hard-drinking, commitment-phobic Malibu bachelor who cycled through women, avoided anything resembling emotional accountability, and generally behaved as though consequences were for other people. The character was, by most accounts, only lightly fictionalized. Sheen himself has confirmed that the role was essentially written around his real personality. His personal life across the show's run involved 3 marriages, all of which ended in divorce. His marriage to actress Denise Richards, which lasted from 2002 to 2006, produced 2 daughters and a high volume of tabloid coverage. Richards alleged multiple forms of misconduct during the marriage, including infidelity. His marriage to Brooke Mueller, which followed in 2008, was similarly turbulent and ended in 2011. Reports at the time alleged an affair with a lingerie model and part-time escort named Angelina Tracy, though the full details of what ended each marriage were never entirely resolved in public. What made Sheen's personal life unusual, even by Hollywood standards, was the sheer consistency of it. He wasn't a man who cheated and was surprised by his own behavior. He was a man who had built a career, a public image, and a decade-long network sitcom around the premise that this was simply who he was. When the show finally ended and the performance could no longer contain the reality, the two things had become so entangled that almost nobody could tell where the character ended, and the person began, including, by some accounts, Sheen himself. The divorce that Hollywood called inevitable. Robin Williams became famous on Mork and Mindy, the sitcom that launched his career in 1978. He played an alien learning to understand human behavior, which, in hindsight, carried a certain irony. Williams himself, by multiple accounts, including his first wife's, had significant difficulty understanding the boundaries of a committed relationship once fame arrived. Williams married Valerie Velarde in 1978, the same year Mork and Mindy premiered. Velarde has been candid in interviews about the years that followed. As Williams' career exploded, he reportedly began having affairs with increasing frequency. Velarde has described the environment around him as one where, in her words, very attractive women threw themselves at him constantly, and that resisting would have required a level of sainthood most people don't possess. She has been notably measured about it, acknowledging the extraordinary pressures of his sudden rise. But the affairs were real, and they accumulated. The marriage ended in 1988 after a 10-year run. Williams had already begun a relationship with his son's nanny, Marcia Garcés, while still married to Velarde. He and Garcés married in 1989, and that marriage lasted until 2008. Williams later married Susan Schneider, with whom he remained until his death in 2014. He has spoken in interviews about his personal failings during the earlier years, with characteristic self-awareness and pain, acknowledging that the version of himself that fame produced in those first years was not someone he was entirely proud of. When the nanny became the next wife, the pattern of Robin Williams' first marriage, a famous man, an affair with the nanny, a quiet exit from one life into another, was not unique to him. It also described, with remarkable precision, the situation involving another major television personality of the same era, whose name became permanently attached to a similar scandal a generation later. What makes the Williams case worth sitting with, separate from the more famous examples, is how thoroughly it was absorbed into his public persona without ever quite being confronted directly. He was beloved in a way that seemed to foreclose serious scrutiny. Audiences who knew Mork still largely saw him as a kind of magical, benevolent force. His extraordinary generosity in other areas of life, his work with veterans, with homeless populations, with anyone in his orbit who needed help, was real and well documented. The complexity of his private behavior sat uncomfortably alongside that generosity, and most people, understandably, chose to look at the parts of him that were easier to love. The Governor's Secret Life. What separated Schwarzenegger's infidelity from many of the others on this list was not the affair itself, but the duration of the concealment. For approximately 14 years, from the moment his son Joseph was born in 1997 until the counseling session in 2011, Schwarzenegger maintained the secret while living one of the most public lives in the country. He appeared on talk shows. He campaigned for governor. He gave speeches about family values. He attended events with Shriver at his side, watched as she defended him from tabloid allegations he knew to be, in some sense, true. Maria Shriver has written about this period with striking clarity. She described herself as having been, in the year their marriage ended, simultaneously grieving her mother's death, her father's death, the end of her role as California's First Lady, and the dissolution of a 25-year marriage all at once. In a poem published in her memoir, she wrote of going from love and freedom to pain and prison. The public version of the Schwarzenegger marriage had been a story of a Hollywood power couple building something lasting together. The private version, she made clear, had been considerably more complicated for some time. When Arnold described the affair in his own memoir as a mixture of stupidity and arrogance, it was the closest thing to an explanation he offered. Shriver, in her writing, suggested that explanation didn't quite cover it. The affair that cost $30 million and ended the relationship. Anyway, the particular cruelty of Ted Danson's situation, and perhaps the most instructive part of the whole story, is that the affair with Whoopi Goldberg that destroyed his marriage and cost him an extraordinary sum of money also didn't last. After Danson paid $30 million to his former wife and absorbed the full weight of public scandal, the relationship with Goldberg that had precipitated all of it ended within 18 months of becoming public. Reportedly, the final rupture came at a charity roast in 1993, where Danson appeared in blackface as part of a comedy routine that Goldberg claimed she had approved, but which generated an enormous and largely hostile reaction from attendees. The relationship dissolved not long after. Danson has described this period, without much specificity, as the moment he finally began to understand himself. He met Mary Steenburgen shortly afterward, on the set of a film, and the two married in 1995. By his own account, it took until he was in his late 40s to become the person that relationship required him to be. He has called himself lucky to have arrived at it at all. The $30 million, the destroyed marriage, the brief relationship that set it all in motion in retrospect, it reads less like a love story than like a very expensive education. The affair Reese called humiliating. Ryan Phillippe is not primarily known as a sitcom actor, but his career has moved through television consistently enough to earn him a place in this conversation. And the story of his marriage's end is one of Hollywood's most closely watched examples of infidelity's very public costs. He and Reese Witherspoon had met at her 21st birthday party in 1997, married 2 years later, and spent the early 2000s as one of the most photographed young couples in Hollywood. They had 2 children together. The marriage ended in 2006, reportedly because Witherspoon discovered text messages between Phillippe and his stop-loss co-star Abby Cornish. Phillippe denied having an affair and has maintained that denial consistently. Cornish has also denied it, but the two began dating in 2006, the same year the marriage ended, and the timing has followed both of them publicly ever since. Witherspoon, speaking to CBS in 2009, described the divorce as humiliating and said that the period afterward left her feeling as though her brain was scrambled eggs. She described floundering professionally, struggling to find projects she cared about, and generally needing years to recover from what the end of the marriage had done to her sense of herself. Phillippe and Cornish's relationship eventually ended as well. Both have since moved on. Witherspoon remarried in 2011 and has spoken, in the years since, about having built a life she feels genuinely proud of. Whether what ended the marriage was a full affair or something more ambiguous has never been fully established on the public record. What is established is that Witherspoon found something that changed everything, and that neither of them ever fully recovered the public image they had shared as a couple.